Welcome, guys, to Critical Thinking and Practical Reasoning. Today, we're still on Unit 1, which is Critical Thinking and Meaning and Why It Matters. We'll be detailing on Session 6, that is Informal Fallacies. By the end of this session, we aim to have done a good definition for informal fallacies, identified some of the informal fallacies. Now, what are fallacies? Fallacy is actually an error in reasoning, right? But basically, we are looking at two types of fallacies here. There is a formal fallacy and informal fallacy. Now, formal fallacies, they actually fallacies that actually show an error in the structure of the argument, which are actually shown most often in deductive arguments. But then an informal fallacy is actually an error in the argument which is shown in the content and not the structure. You see, formal fallacy deals with the structure, informal fallacy deals with content. Please kindly note that. Now, let's go ahead to talk about the various examples of informal fallacies, and that's what we are discussing in this session. So, the first of them are psychological related fallacies. The first is appeal to anger. Appeal to anger basically occurs when you a critical thinker or any agent or any person taking a decision at any moment allow yourself open for somebody to influence you to take a decision. But how do they influence you? They influence you by making you angry. If they are able to get you angry so you do what they want you to do, then you have appealed to anger, right? So you can see here it says that this fallacy occurs when a person allows themselves to be persuaded with anger, right? So the example there says that how could you vote for the US president? Do you not know what he says about blacks? So if you get angry by this little information given by a friend, then you wouldn't vote for the US president, right? Now the second one is an appeal to fear, which is also almost similar to what appeal to what anger. Here you allow yourself to be influenced by fear, right? So if somebody is trying to make you afraid to do certain things, then that is what is considered as what appeal to fear. See, this fallacy occurs when a person allows themselves to be persuaded with fear, with agenda of influencing their ideas or actions without providing appropriate reasons. So it says, are you sure you want to go and study at this time? It's really dark. Anyway, go ahead, right? So that is appeal to fear. Now, there's another one which is appeal to pity, and this fallacy occurs when as a person is convinced on grounds of being pitiful of or sympathetic to influence their action without providing appropriate reasons. So, Ginger, your dog ran into our house and ransacked our kitchen. Mary, he would never do that. Look at how adorable he is with those puppy eyes. By this, the person is trying to make the dog look pitiful so that that activity it did by ransacking the place will be forgone. Now, appeal to popularity, which is the next fallacy. This fallacy occurs when an arguer supports a conclusion by referring to the number of people who believed in it. So simply, you are just going with a crowd and just validating what somebody says without necessarily checking whether it's true or not. It says that there must be some truth to the fact that global warming is a hoax because about approximately 70%, 75% of the population believe that it's a hoax. And that's an appeal to popularity. I just appealing to what the masses are saying. Now let's look at fallacies of distraction. Now, fallacies of distraction, we have appeal to ignorance. This basically takes this is a fallacy that basically takes this form. It says that S is true because you cannot prove that S is false, and X is false because you cannot prove that S is true. That's the simplest of its examples, right? Let's look at false dilemma. False dilemma is a fallacy which occurs when you are presented with two options as though they are the only options that exist. Meanwhile, so this one will be wrong in this instance. It says you either like it or you don't, and which is not actually true, right? Because there could be other existing options. Maybe somebody's telling you this because he was trying to hand you over a baby and you didn't carry the baby. But I could have stained arms. My arms are maybe dirty, right? So the next one is slippery slope. This occurs when progressively we allege a progressively dubious chain of events as ultimately leading to a feared and desired end. So when you think that there's one event that will eventually lead to a particular event in the end, and the likelihood of it happening is improbable, then you are committing a slippery slope. If you allow your wife to choose the movie you watch, she would want to choose the dresses for you. Eventually she will control your life. And that's an example of slippery slope. Let's look at appeal to false authority. At appeal to false authority, what happens here is that the person cites an inappropriate authority as evidence to support a certain conclusion. It says Kantanka, a world-renowned engineer, claims that the economy of every country will collapse in the next 10 years. I agree with his position because he is good at what he does. But Kantanka is not an economist, so he is not the appropriate authority for this subject matter. Appeal to force or threat. Here, this fallacy occurs when an arguer supports a conclusion by remarking about what would happen to the receiver if he or she doesn't believe the conclusion. So now the error here says that the example we have goes like, never do anything in this office without pre-informing me if you want to keep your job. And that's under threat, right? If the person is under threat, the person will be forced to do it the way you want them to do it. Now we have fallacy of personal attack. Right? Here, instead of the main subject being discussed, the person avoids the subject by fallacy of changing the subject, the definition, the category itself, and attacks the person's private life. So instead of talking about the main issue under discussion, they attack the person. Of course, he cannot be the president of Ghana, or can't be the president. He is too short to represent us, right? That is a personal attack. If the person can't be a president, you should state the reasons why the person can't be a president. But rather, jumping into the person's private life to assess and make such criticisms, you are attacking the person. So the strawman fallacy occurs when one accuses a person of a position they did not take, usually a position that's far worse than their position. So the arguer can comfortably denounce their position. See an example here. Abna says she thinks her friends should not be so rude to the new girl. Jenna says she cannot believe that Abna is choosing to be better friends with the new girl than the girls who have always known her. Here they've misinterpreted what Abna tried to say to make it sound something different, right? And that's not what Abna says. So in Strawman, the person, there's a misinterpretation of what somebody says, and they've drawn it to a wrong conclusion. Let's look at red herring. What happens with red herring? Red herring occurs when there's an attempt to digress the argument to another issue, which the person doing the digression can better respond. So there's a digression to a better side where, at this better side I can better respond to the issue from this angle. So the person does that. See, Donald Trump was asked about his negligence in handling the coronavirus in early 2020. Donald Trump argues that despite the detrimental effect of coronavirus on the lives of many, the American economy is still thriving. So he just changed the subject to a place where he can better talk about it, and that's the American economy. So let's look at the next. Now let's look at fallacies of induction. With the fallacies of induction, we are looking at circular reasoning, hasty generalization, and misplaced vividness. Talking about these, circular reasoning, under circular reasoning, there's a particular position that is held, and there's a newly stated position, which is actually the old, which is being restated in disguise. So it ends up going in a circular motion. So it's basically not stating anything new. It's just the old that has been restated, and that's an alleged chain of reaction that doesn't provide any sufficient evidence that chain of reaction will actually take place. See the first example. Steroids have adverse effects on our health. Adverse effect is actually negative, and it says because they are harmful to our health. You've not said anything new. It's just a oh that is being repeated in another way. Let's look at hasty generalization. This fallacy occurs when the sample used in the argument is too small to represent the population referred in the conclusion of the argument. So let's say you have of uh small size sample, and you based on that size sample you draw a conclusion, and that is what is considered as what hasty generalization. Now, indeed, all women are caring. How do you say all women are caring when you don't know all women? Then any woman you know up to any number are the most little women, like number of women you know. Not all women can you be very sure that are caring, and that is hasty generalization. Misplaced vividness, which is a cousin to hasty generalization. It says in this fallacy, a few dramatic or phenomenon vivid examples or events or phenomenon are taken to outweigh overwhelming statistical evidence. Miss Marisa Lloyd, an African American citizen, recently acquired a white collar job in the United States of America after finishing her national service. It follows that many African American citizens are likely to acquire white collar jobs after national service. This session has been great. We have elaborated on informal fallacies. However, formal fallacies will be discussed in the subsequent sessions. The essence of knowing the fallacies is to help critical thinking students argue better and also identify the fallacies in other people's arguments to avoid illogical arguments. Thank you for your attention. Have a great time. Bye.